Hey you guys, it's Britt. Tonight we're here with a monumental update on the Ruby, Franke, and Jodi Hildebrandt cases that have been kind of in a hold as of lately. But today Ruby did appear in court, and this is a really big update. So if you're interested, please keep watching. All right, you guys, so I watched Ruby Franke in the courtroom today, just moments after it happened. I watched the video and I was absolutely shocked to have been witnessing this. It was shocking the first time that we saw her in, the jail video from the hearing a few months ago, but to see her actually through a camera lens in the courthouse speaking, giving looks towards her family, whom some of the family was there in the courtroom. It was a very interesting video to watch and witness because, as somebody who's been covering 8Passengers for 3 years on my channel off and on, to see this YouTuber who you're accustomed to seeing her in her home or in her vehicle, to see her in this courtroom actually moving around and sitting next to her attorney in handcuffs, like, to me it was just a very strange thing to witness. I actually watched the video twice, but either way, I want to read this update to you guys, and yeah, we'll just do like we normally do, and I'll give my opinions throughout. It starts and says, in St. George, Utah, smiling as she walked into a Washington County courtroom, Ruby Franke pleaded guilty on Monday to multiple counts of aggravated child abuse brought against her earlier this year. As part of the plea deal, Franke agreed to testify against her former business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt. Within the deal, Franke admitted to the abuse her children faced, calling them acts of love. So, first of all, the idea of Ruby testifying against Jodi is absolutely wild to me. And to be witnessing this as an internet culture is even more so, because obviously we've seen these people in a different environment, and to see all of this unfolding, and now it not only was awful, but now we're kind of on the other side of this where Ruby is testifying against Jodi. They went from, holding hands and going on boat rides to now one of them testifying against the other. And what I will say is, it always comes back for me to the point that this would have continued if her son did not escape that house. In my opinion, and this might sound extremely harsh, and I do apologize if it comes off that way, but I truly believe that they would have been recovering body bags out of Jodi's house if he had not escaped out of her home and gotten help. I truly believe that this would have been a deadly situation that law enforcement was dealing with, and it's bad enough as is. It's absolutely awful. It's heartbreaking. It's all of the bad things. But that's why I really struggle to say anything even remotely along the lines of teaching and learning and growing and karma or justice or anything, because they only stopped because her son escaped the house. This would not be happening if he did not have the courage. That young, frail, abused, sick child escaped Jodi Hildebrandt's house, and he told on them. They didn't tell on each other. They didn't stop the abuse within the house and then turn on one another. The child escaped the home and told on the adults in order to save himself and his other siblings. Continues and says, Franke and her attorney worked with prosecutors on a plea agreement that saw her plead guilty to 4 of the 6 counts against her, with 2 others having been dismissed. All of the counts are second-degree felonies, and Franke agreeing to serve a prison sentence was part of the agreement. I'm really glad that she's going to see, hopefully she's going to see some good amount of years behind bars. You know, honestly, when I first heard of this plea being kind of mentioned days ago, I was very concerned that somehow, some way, Ruby was going to get away with time served and be put on like 5 years or 10 years probation and no access to the kids or anything like that. But in my opinion, I think that would be letting her off way, way too easily for what she allowed to happen to her children, the things that she participated in, the things she co-signed, the things that she was maybe partially involved in. She failed her children as a mother. She failed them as a protector. She failed them as just a common human being to human being. And I think that she is exactly where she belongs. It continues and says, when asked by the judge John J. Walton if she had read the agreement carefully, Franke replied, every word. He said, you don't need any more time. She responded, I'm ready.
Ms. Franke is now here. Mr. Winward, we are scheduled for a waiver hearing. Is there going to be a waiver today?
There will, plus a plea agreement, Your Honor.
All right.
I'll ask the bailiff to hand you what has been executed.
All right. Mr. Winward, you have discussed with Ms. Franke a preliminary hearing, what's involved in a preliminary hearing. She understands she has a right to a preliminary hearing on all of the charges in the case. She understands what the charges are, and she's prepared to waive a preliminary hearing in the case on all charges?
She is, and that is contained in this agreement on page 7 as well.
Very good. All right. I've been handed a plea agreement, and it appears to be signed by Ms. Franke. Ms. Franke, did you sign this agreement?
Yes.
And you did that today? When did you sign it?
The 18th.
Okay. You've read it carefully?
Every word.
Your signature represents to the court that you've read it carefully, that you understand what you've read, and that you agree to all of the terms. Is that all accurate?
Yes.
You've had sufficient time to ask questions of your counsel, to go over any questions you have. You're ready to go forward.
Yes.
You don't need any more time.
I'm ready.
Judge Walton then went over the 4 counts to which Franke replied guilty, except for on the final count, to which she said, with my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and children, guilty.
Ready to proceed?
We are ready to proceed.
All right, then. Ms. Franke, how do you plead to count 1, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 3, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 5, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
And to count 6, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony?
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children, guilty.
There is a factual basis set forth in the agreement. That is a stipulated factual basis, counsel?
That's correct, Your Honor. That is correct, Judge Walton.
Following the pleas, Walton announced that sentencing will take place on February 20th. I believe he set the time for 10 a.m., but I will confirm in my notes and put it on the screen for you guys. You can obviously find it in other places as well, but if you're watching this and you're interested, I believe it is at 10 a.m. Utah time, so that also varies depending on where you are around the world. But for anyone who is interested, it is February 20th, I believe at 10 a.m. It continues and says, when Franke is sentenced, the plea deal stipulates she will serve all 4 sentences consecutively, which is a huge deal in this. Serving her time consecutively, to me, is a little bit of, if you want to say like a glimmer of hope, that is one of these small little glimmers of hope in this situation. Each of the counts brings a prison sentence between 1 and 15 years. However, those terms are flexible and up to the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. We are pleased that Ms. Franke has accepted responsibility for her criminal actions and that justice is being served to the extent possible in this type of situation, said Washington County District Attorney Eric Clark. What I want to say about that, though, is it goes back to what I was saying earlier, and that is they stopped because they got caught. They literally got outed by Ruby's son because he escaped and asked for help. This is not something where it's like one day she just woke up and realized that she was living a distortion and everything was being manipulated by Jodi and she decided to go to the authorities. That is not what this is. And as I said, I do believe that there would have been deadly consequences if this didn't stop when it did. And I've already covered this, but I will go ahead and just skim over it in this video just to bring you guys fully up to speed. But it continues and says, Franke and Hildebrandt were arrested in August after one of Franke's children escaped Hildebrandt's home, knocked on the door of a neighbor in Ivans, and asked for food and water. The neighbor noticed duct tape on the child's ankles and wrists and called police, according to the court documents. Police later found one of Franke's daughters emaciated inside Hildebrandt's home. The plea agreement details the levels of abuse inflicted upon Franke's children between May and August of 2023. One of Franke's children, identified as RF, was forced to do physical tasks for hours and days at a time, including carrying boxes full of books up and down the stairs and working outside. RF was forced to do labor outside without shoes and to remain outside all hours of the day and night for extended periods of time, causing serious sunburns. Can you imagine being stuck outside in the Utah blazing sun as a child doing manual labor? These two allowed this to happen until they got caught. And that is why I have I'm not ready to have that conversation of, oh, well, they've been in jail for X number of days. They've been in jail for X number of months. I'm just not there yet because that argument is not it's not in the front of my mind. I just don't think that we are anywhere even remotely close to them being held fully accountable for the absolute horror that they inflicted upon these children. It continues and says, RF was denied water for days and punished when he secretly consumed water. He was also isolated from other people and denied all forms of entertainment. When RF attempted to run away in July, his hands and feet were bound and then he was tied to weights. Franke admitted she kicked RF while wearing boots, held his head underwater, and cut off his oxygen by placing her hands over his mouth and nose. Those children would have been carried out in body bags. And that is why I don't buy this, oh, well, she's doing the right thing. No, she was caught. And now she is turning on the person who she was doing this disgusting behavior with, because that is what Ruby's going to do. Yes, I am glad that her children do not have to testify. I do think that it will save them some of the time and embarrassment and pain that would come out if she had not done this. But I am not here to give Ruby a pass because she said that she was guilty. Franke said she and another adult sought to indoctrinate RF and convince him that he was evil and possessed and that the punishments were necessary to repent, but they were done as acts of love. This is Lori Vallow. You cannot convince me that Ruby, Jodi, and Lori Vallow do not have the same brain makeup or whatever you want to call that. These just ultimate extreme religious, these kinds of people, like they, I hate to say it, but people like Ruby Franke, this is why so many ex-Mormons come out and they share their stories. And, that's why I've always said that their stories are very important to this conversation. Their voices are very valid. And it's just really unfortunate the disgust that happens for months and years at a time, many times to children who cannot defend themselves. The plea agreement said the sister of RF, identified as EF, was subject to the same treatment as her brother, and that was she was also convinced that she was evil. Both Franke and Hildebrandt were charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse, The two had previously collaborated on parenting advice videos for Connections, which, by the way, the Connections site is still up. I don't understand why. The Instagram page is still up. I do not know why. I have reported it multiple times on Instagram, and their website should be shut down. I don't know what on earth is happening there. It says, in a statement Friday, Franke's attorneys appeared to place blame on Hildebrandt, claiming that Franke is a devoted mother who was taken advantage of by a person she trusted. I am sorry, I don't believe that for a second. I don't buy into that. I'm not believing Ruby's narrative, because this is not the behavior of somebody who was temporarily taken advantage of, but knew full and well that what she was participating in was wrong and it was hurting her children. So she decided to remove herself and her children from this situation and work with the proper authorities to make sure that this was put to a full stop and things were properly taken care of. She actively participated in it. She allowed it to happen, and she fanned the flames, and she abused her children. I think that the woman is a deranged monster. It continues and says, initially, Miss Franke believed that Jodi Hildebrandt had the insight to offer a path to continual improvement. Miss Hildebrandt took advantage of this quest and twisted it into something heinous. The statement reads, Franke's lawyers say Hildebrandt systematically isolated Ruby Franke from her extended family, older children, and her husband, Kevin Franke. This prolonged isolation resulted in Miss Franke being subjected to a distorted sense of morality shaped by Miss Hildebrandt's influence. So what on earth? If you ask me, they were both living in distortion. They were both feeding each other this toxicity that was seeping out of their pores and bleeding onto these children in the form of egregious child abuse. According to the Windward law firm, Franke has engaged in introspection while in jail over the last several months and understands the full weight of her actions. The kinds of things that Ruby and Jodi were participating in, just to elaborate on that, it says in the official documents that he was denied food. When he was given meals, they were very plain, like giving him rice and chicken, while others in the house ate regular or more flavorful meals. He was isolated from other people and denied all forms of entertainment, including books, notebooks, and electronics. In addition, RF decided he tried to run away in July. His hands and feet were regularly bound, binding including being tied to the defendant and to weights. Many times the binding included two sets of handcuffs, one for RF's wrists and one on his ankles. At times, RF was lying on his stomach. Ropes were used to tie the two sets of handcuffs together so that his arms and lower legs lifted off the ground. The bindings resulted in injuries to RF's wrists and ankles, where the handcuffs cut through the skin and damaged the muscle and tissue. These injuries were treated with homeopathic remedies and covered with duct tape. Then the bindings were placed on top of the duct tape. Hey guys, I also wanted to just add in the very obvious point here that holistic is not putting cayenne pepper and honey on open wounds. I've talked about that before, but I did want to reiterate it because when I was reading this document, I was just so shocked. I forgot to reiterate that, but I think that most of us are on the same page that the cayenne pepper and honey was being used as an added form of neglect. And EF was forced to work outside in the heat barefoot. She was also forced to run barefoot on dirt roads for an extended period of time. Her feet were repeatedly injured by, and she was repeatedly sunburned. When examined on August 30th, these wounds were apparent by scabs, blisters, and sloughing skin. Just as a quick comparison, I do want to close this video out, but if you guys are wondering, it really, you know, here's the thing, just to mention it, the two that the state agreed to dismiss were count 2, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony, and count 4, aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony. So count 1, 3, 5, and 6 are the ones that she agreed to plead guilty to. I'm very upset that I've seen people saying, oh, well, you know, I'm just tired of oh, well, she's been in jail. Like, what else do you guys want? Like, she's in jail and she's lost her home and her family and her kids. But like, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? She didn't pull the plug. She didn't pull the plug and stop abusing her kids and realize what was going on was so disgusting and wrong. Ruby Franke kicked her child in the head with boots on and cut off his oxygen. She cut off his oxygen. That is not somebody who, I'm sorry, was brainwashed. She was actively participating, and I don't know what the hell her and Jodi were doing behind closed doors, but it's very obvious that both of them were very, very involved in everything that was going on behind the 4 walls of Jodi's hell house. Ruby signed this today, which is December 18th. I'm going to post this video immediately for you guys. She's definitely going to do prison time, which I am happy about. How long? Nobody knows. People are, taking their guesses. Some people say 4 years, some people say 6, some say 10, some say 15. Like, I don't know. I just want to make sure that she is not just going to, be able to go in there and then get out a few years later and like rebuild, I question why were people even following them on social media? Why were people allowing these two to be even remotely relevant? It really, really bothers me. And for every Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt that we know about, there are several more that we don't know about. And I think that there were enough red flags presented ahead of time where Ruby and Jodi should not have had a platform to stand on. When somebody shows you these types of red flags, believe them. I constantly say, someone shows you who they are, believe them. Someone shows you who they are, believe them. Someone shows you who they are, believe them. And Ruby and Jodi were both showing you who they were. And they still had millions of followers. And they were collecting money for this damn connections. How to abuse your children. What a damn mess. But either way, that's the update on Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. Obviously a very big update, a monumental point in this trial. And again, I will say what I've said in every other video. I hope that the kids are okay. I hope that they are being surrounded with love and kindness and compassion and all of the positive things, because these kids have a really long road ahead of them. And I'm not talking about just the minor kids, I'm talking about the adult kids too, but obviously the younger ones, this is just, I can't even imagine. I don't want to put into words because I don't even know, to be quite honest. But either way, yeah, I think that's it for today. So if you liked the video, please leave a like and a comment. And if you'd like to see more from me in the future, please subscribe. I'll see you guys soon.